You struggle with power not because the world is unfair, but because you're playing by rules that no one else follows. In this video, we're going to dismantle the illusions that keep you weak, expose the hidden laws that govern influence, and reveal the 5 power principles that once mastered will make you impossible to ignore, impossible to manipulate, and impossible to overthrow. Power is not given, it is seized quietly, patiently, and with eyes that see what others refuse to acknowledge. Every society, every workplace, every relationship hides a battlefield beneath its surface, yet most people drift through it blind, believing that decency alone will protect them. It never does. If you wish to rise, you must first understand the secret architecture behind human behavior, the impulses, fears, and ambitions that drive people more reliably than truth or morality. And so today, I will guide you through 5 power laws that reshape my own view of the world, not as it pretends to be, but as it is. These laws are not comfortable, they are not kind, but they are real. And once you recognize them, you will never again be fooled by appearances, promises, or sentiment. You will begin to see the levers that move people and the strings that pull them. Perception decides victories long before action begins. You already know this instinctively, yet you overlook it every time you expect honesty to win over illusion. Ask yourself, when have you ever followed the truth simply because it was true? More often, you obey what feels powerful, what looks certain, what appears unshakable. Humans have always bent the knee to the strongest image, not the strongest fact. Consider the rise of Cesare Borgia, a man often remembered more for the shadow he cast than the actions he took. His power was not built merely on soldiers or coin, but on the terror and admiration he skillfully projected. People feared disappointing him more than they feared resisting him. And that was no accident. It was calculated. It was crafted. It was perception, sharpened into a weapon. Now look at yourself. When you enter a room, what story walks in ahead of you? Do others see someone decisive, or someone waiting for orders? Someone formidable, or someone hoping to be liked? Understand this. Perception forms before you speak your first word. And once it forms, it becomes the frame through which every action you take is interpreted. Even your virtues become amplified or dismissed by the image people already believe. This is why some individuals rise effortlessly, while others, more capable and more deserving, remain invisible. They mistake truth for influence. They imagine that merit will speak for them, but merit has no voice until perception hands it a mouthpiece. In politics, in workplaces, in relationships, the person who controls the narrative controls the outcome. Look at the tyrants of old. Why did the Roman people adore Augustus yet despise so many who came after him? Augustus understood a principle that would echo through centuries: rule by image first, by law second. He cloaked absolute authority beneath a facade of restoration and stability. The people embraced him not because they understood his strategy, but because they accepted the perception he orchestrated with relentless discipline. You might think you are above such manipulation, that you are rational, analytical, immune to these currents. But your mind is wired for shortcuts, for symbols, for impressions that bypass thought and strike directly at instinct. A firm voice, a poised posture, a glance that holds rather than flees, these shape your decisions more than logic ever will. So ask yourself, what perceptions do you allow others to craft about you? Every hesitation writes a line in the story they tell. Every unnecessary explanation paints you as uncertain. Every attempt to prove yourself broadcasts insecurity. Strength, on the other hand, needs no commentary. It needs no justification. It is recognized through presence, not proclamation. Think of modern manipulators: the charismatic CEO who speaks in absolutes, the political leader who simplifies complexities into bold slogans, the social figure who cultivates mystery rather than transparency. They understand that perception is the currency the world never questions. Once they hold it, they can spend it however they wish. And here is the deeper truth: perception does not need to match reality to shape it. A person perceived as competent is granted opportunities that make them competent. A person perceived as powerful receives deference that reinforces their power. Image becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The world bends toward the figure who appears most capable of commanding it. Where does this leave you? With a choice: continue trusting that truth alone will elevate you, or take control of the image that precedes you into every arena of your life. This is not deceit. This is strategy. This is the recognition that humans navigate by symbols, shadows, and impressions long before they reach the substance beneath. Craft your presence deliberately. Let your silence carry more weight than others' noise. Let your composure hint at depths they cannot measure. Let your appearance of certainty harden into real certainty over time, and when others finally see you as formidable, they will treat you as such even if they cannot explain why. But understand this carefully. Once you master perception, you gain influence. Once you gain influence, you gain responsibility. And the next question becomes far more dangerous. What will you choose to do with it? The next law will expose your deeper limits. Silence is a fortress few dare to build, yet it is the strongest defense you possess. Words scatter your intentions like leaves in a storm, but silence holds them close, guarded and untouchable. Ask yourself, how many mistakes in your life were born not from action, but from speaking too quickly, revealing too much, trusting too easily? You know this pattern well, yet you fall into it repeatedly. Why? Because speech flatters the ego while silence strengthens the mind. Consider the rulers of old who understood the power of withholding. A prudent leader never revealed his full thoughts, not even to his most loyal allies. This restraint made him unpredictable, and unpredictability made him dangerous. When others cannot read you, they cannot plan against you. They hesitate, they speculate, they fear, and fear is a weapon that requires no movement, no noise, only presence. Look at the story of the Venetian diplomats, famed for their discipline in conversation. They mastered the art of giving nothing while appearing generous. Their silence was not emptiness, it was strategy. They listened, and in listening, they extracted weakness from others who mistook their quiet for passivity. In reality, every pause was a calculation, every unanswered question a controlled advantage. Now think about your own interactions. How often do you rush to fill the space after someone finishes speaking? That impulse reveals far more than you imagine. It exposes insecurity, eagerness, and the desire for approval. Silence, on the other hand, forces others to confront themselves. It turns their own words into a mirror they cannot escape. And while they fill the air with explanations and justifications, you gather information they never intended to reveal. Modern manipulators understand this well. In negotiations, the person who speaks first often loses. In arguments, the one who reacts emotionally surrenders control. In relationships, the individual who reveals their intentions too early gives the other person leverage. Silence disrupts these dynamics. It creates tension, and tension compels truth. People reveal more under silence than under interrogation. But silence is more than a tactic. It is a signal. It tells others that you do not need to justify yourself. You do not need validation. You do not need their approval. And nothing unsettles people more than someone who cannot be pressed into confession. This is why strategic silence has toppled alliances, ended careers, and turned apparent weakness into undeniable influence. Consider how many leaders fell because they spoke too openly. Julius Caesar trusted his charm and eloquence, believing he could speak his way out of danger. But his openness bred suspicion. His words stirred envy. His transparency lit the path that led his enemies straight to him. Had he concealed more, had he wrapped his ambitions in silence, the blades that met him might never have been drawn. You must learn from this. Silence does not mean absence. It means power withheld until it becomes unavoidable. It means choosing the moment of revelation with precision. It means allowing others to believe what they wish while you advance quietly beneath their assumptions. And when the moment arrives to speak, your words strike with the weight of a hammer, not the scatter of dust. So reflect. What might your life look like if you stopped explaining yourself? If you allowed mystery to work in your favor? If you let others wonder what you are thinking instead of broadcasting your thoughts to anyone who will listen? People respect what they cannot predict. They admire composure, they fear restraint. Yet remember this. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the presence of intention. You can wield it to stall an opponent's advance, to unsettle a rival who expects compliance, or to observe a friend whose loyalty you doubt. Each quiet moment becomes a stage on which others reveal their true nature. Their ambitions, their fears, resentments all surface when confronted with your unreadable stillness. For silence unmasks what speech desperately tries to hide. And the question is, will you be ready to use it? Force is a crude tool, but the threat of it is an instrument of elegance. You already know this instinctively. Most of your victories in life were won not by what you did, but by what others feared you might do. The possibility of consequences bends behavior more efficiently than the consequences themselves. So ask yourself, why reveal your full strength when the shadow of it achieves more with far less risk? History has always favored the figure who wielded fear without descending into brutality. Consider the reign of the Ottoman sultans who maintained order through an image of swift punishment while rarely needing to carry it out personally. Their subjects behaved not because violence was constant, but because it was convincingly possible. That possibility governed choices, tamed rebellion, and preserved stability. Raw force demands attention, but the potential for force inspires obedience before conflict even begins. Think of the battlefield commanders who won before drawing their swords. Hannibal terrified Rome, not merely through victory, but through reputation. The Senate feared what he might accomplish next, what city he might take, what alliances he might forge. His unpredictability became a phantom that haunted them more relentlessly than his armies ever could. You must ask yourself, in your own life, do people fear disappointing you? Or do they assume you will tolerate anything? Your answer reveals whether you command influence or merely request it. In modern life, the same law governs negotiations, relationships, workplaces, and social hierarchies. The employee who hints he is willing to walk away earns higher respect than the one who clings to security. The partner who demonstrates boundaries through calm firmness is taken more seriously than the one who explodes in anger. The leader who speaks softly yet carries a reputation for decisive action shapes behavior without raising their voice. The key is subtlety, showing that you are capable of consequences without ever becoming reckless. This is where many fail. They believe strength lies in demonstrating aggression, in making threats loudly, in punishing every slight. But excessive force creates instability. It breeds resentment. It invites retaliation. A wise strategist never chooses unnecessary conflict because conflict drains resources, time, and reputation. Instead, they cultivate an aura and understanding that while they prefer peace, they will not hesitate when provoked. In this balance between restraint and decisiveness, true power forms. Consider an example from everyday manipulation: the manager who never raises his voice, but whose quiet disappointment is feared more than any shouting superior. His authority comes from the belief that he possesses the ability to escalate further if needed, even though he rarely does. His restraint makes his potential actions more intimidating. Employees modify their behavior to avoid activating what they imagine he is capable of. This is the essence of refined control, letting imagination do the labor that force would otherwise require. You can use this principle too. Set boundaries not through rage but through clarity. Respond to disrespect not with outbursts, but with withdrawal and decisive changes in behavior. Let others feel the shift. Let them wonder what it means. Humans fear uncertainty more than pain, because uncertainty forces the mind to fill in the blanks with its darkest predictions. A single calm sentence, "Don't do that again," delivered with composure carries more weight than the loudest threats. People fear those who do not need theatrics to protect themselves. But here is the deeper psychology. When you show that your reactions are measured, others begin to trust that your potential actions are equally measured. Your threat becomes credible precisely because you do not use it casually. People fear the person who controls themselves because self-control suggests the ability to control outcomes. It signals that your choices are intentional, not emotional. And when people recognize that you act from strategy rather than impulse, they adjust their behavior cautiously around you. So reflect on this. Are you known for chaos or for consequence? For tantrums or for resolve? For empty promises or silent capability? The world bows not to the loudest person, but to the one whose quiet suggests an undiscovered depth. And now you must confront the next truth. If the threat of force can bend others, what bends you? The following law will expose exactly that. Allies are praised in stories, yet in reality they survive only as long as you remain useful. This is the quiet truth most people fear to admit. You cling to the idea of loyalty because it comforts you, because it suggests your relationships are built on sentiment rather than strategy. But look closely. How many people stayed beside you when your usefulness faded? How many drifted away once your value diminished, once your influence waned? Once your advantage no longer served theirs? You have seen this pattern repeatedly, yet you continue believing that loyalty is a virtue guaranteed by kindness or shared memories. It is not. Loyalty is purchased through relevance, and relevance is maintained through your ability to adapt. History confirms this with brutal consistency. Consider the shifting alliances of Renaissance Italy. Cities that were allied at sunrise became enemies by sunset, simply because circumstances changed, not love, not affection. Circumstances. One moment Florence embraced Milan for protection. The next it abandoned that alliance when a stronger opportunity emerged. This instability was not moral failure. It was self-preservation. When conditions shift, alliances must shift with them. And you must study this with cold clarity, because your personal world operates under the same laws. Ask yourself, do people rely on you because they admire you, or because they need something you provide? Influence, attention, access, competence, emotional stability. These are currencies far more real than friendship. Think of any modern workplace. Colleagues praise you when your skills elevate their projects. They support you when your presence benefits them. But once your position weakens, their support evaporates. They do not betray you out of malice. They simply adjust to a new power equation. In relationships, the same logic prevails. A partner stays closest when you contribute to their sense of security, status, or identity. Remove that contribution and watch how quickly affection cools. You may call it tragic. Strategists call it natural. This is why the wise do not cling to allies. They cultivate usefulness. When you remain adaptable, you remain necessary. When you remain necessary, you remain protected. Consider the advisors who survived turbulent courts. They did not survive because rulers loved them. They survived because every new ruler found them indispensable. Their knowledge served anyone who took the throne. Their utility transcended loyalty, and so they lived through storms that destroyed men who relied on affection alone. You must become this type of person. Shift your strengths as conditions demand. Reinvent yourself before circumstances force you to. And never mistake temporary alliances for permanent bonds. The person who flatters you today may undermine you tomorrow if it benefits their survival. This is not cynicism, it is clarity. And clarity is the foundation of control. When you understand that relationships are built on exchanged value, you stop demanding loyalty and start commanding it. But let us examine the deeper psychology. Humans are drawn to those who elevate their lives. They avoid those who wear them down. Your task is to become someone whose presence always raises the stakes, someone whose absence creates discomfort. When people realize they lose something important when they lose you support, knowledge, opportunity, emotional leverage, they fight to keep you close. That is the true form of loyalty, necessity disguised as devotion. You can witness this dynamic everywhere. A quiet friend becomes central to a group simply because they connect everyone else. A talented professional becomes irreplaceable because they can solve problems no one else understands. A calm, composed individual becomes a stabilizing force others depend on during conflict. None of this is accidental. It is crafted through consistency, competence, and strategic restraint. But listen carefully, usefulness does not mean servitude. Servants are disposable. Strategists are indispensable. The key is to provide value without becoming dependent on providing it. You must offer what others cannot while maintaining the ability to walk away from anyone who mistakes your contribution for obligation. That balance of giving and withholding creates the aura of someone who must be respected. So reflect now. Have you adapted yourself to remain valuable? Or have you relied on others to appreciate you without reason? Do people stay because you matter, or because you hope they will? These questions are uncomfortable, yet mastering them will reshape every connection in your life. And once you understand the fragility of loyalty, the next law becomes even more dangerous because it reveals who writes the story that determines your fate. Control the narrative, or become nothing more than a character in someone else's story. This is the law that decides whether you rise with intention or drift under the weight of other people's interpretation. Ask yourself, how many times has your reputation been shaped not by your actions, but by how someone described your actions? How many conflicts in your life have begun not with truth, but with whispers, assumptions, or the way a single moment was framed? You know this pattern well, yet you underestimate how deeply narratives rule the world. Facts are fragile. Stories endure. Throughout history, rulers who mastered narrative won battles before armies even moved. Consider Octavian, who later became Augustus. His success against Mark Antony was not secured solely through legions, but through a masterful crafting of perception. He portrayed Antony as a man seduced by a foreign queen, a traitor to Roman virtue. Whether this was truth or propaganda mattered little. The narrative captured the Roman imagination, and once people accepted it, Antony's defeat became inevitable. The story chained him long before the swords did. You must understand this. People judge what they think you are long before they judge what you actually are. Your reputation walks ahead of you, shaping the opportunities you receive, the alliance you form, the respect you are granted, and the boundaries others believe they can cross. If you do not define your identity, someone else will, and they will do so in a way that serves their interests, not yours. Consider your own life. When someone misrepresented your intentions, did you correct it swiftly? Or did you hope the truth would surface on its own? Truth rarely surfaces unaided. Narratives thrive in silence. A rival, a colleague, or even a friend can paint you as unreliable, emotional, weak, arrogant, or naive with just a few carefully chosen remarks. Humans believe stories not because they are accurate, but because they are repeated, emotionally charged, or socially useful. And once a narrative spreads, it binds you like an invisible chain. This is why the powerful never allow others to speak for them. They seize the pen before the story is written. They set the frame that others must operate within. You too must do this. It is not about deception. It is about ensuring your life is not shaped by the interpretations of those who benefit from your vulnerability. Think of the workplace manipulator who subtly controls how everyone is perceived. They praise one colleague's potential while labeling another as difficult. They shift narratives gently, strategically, until everyone sees through their chosen lens. And notice how these perceptions remain even when evidence contradicts them. Why? Because narrative takes root in emotion, not logic. A single phrase, "he's unreliable," can overshadow months of consistency. A single compliment, "she has leadership qualities," can elevate someone far beyond their competence. The storyteller becomes the architect of reality. You must become that architect for your own life. Speak with intention. Present yourself with clarity. Project the traits you want others to associate with you. When you remain silent about who you are, people fill the empty spaces with their own assumptions, and their assumptions rarely favor your ambitions. Narrative also shapes relationships. If you frame yourself as overly available, others cast you as a resource. If you present yourself as calm and self-contained, they treat you as someone who cannot be pushed. The way you describe your boundaries, your goals, your identity determines the role you play in the minds around you. People do not interact with your true self. They interact with the version of you that lives in their imagination. Control that version, and you control the dynamic. But here lies the deeper psychology. Humans crave stories that simplify complexity. If you do not curate your image, they will reduce you to the easiest narrative available. And once you are simplified, you are easily dismissed. The powerful prevent this by crafting an identity that resists reduction. An identity with depth, mystery, and intentional contrast. A presence that makes others hesitate before assuming they understand you fully. So reflect now. Are you directing your own narrative, or are you letting others write it for you? Do people know you as you choose to be known, or as circumstances have painted you? These questions determine your future more than talent or truth ever will. And once you grasp the power of narrative, you are ready for the final law. That reveals what separates those who merely adapt from those who dominate. Ambition is a fire, but without discipline, it burns you before it burns your obstacles. This final law is the hardest to accept because it forces you to confront the enemy you cannot escape, yourself. You pursue power, respect, and control, yet you allow impulses, emotions, and undisciplined habits to sabotage you long before any rival has the chance. So ask yourself, how many opportunities have you lost? Not because someone defeated you, but because you defeated yourself. Throughout history, the most dangerous individuals were not the strongest or the most charismatic. They were the ones who mastered their inner chaos. Consider the example of Emperor Hadrian, a man who understood that ruling an empire required command not only over armies but over temperament. He restrained his anger, controlled his indulgences, and kept his desires aligned with strategy. It was this inner discipline that allowed him to maintain stability where others would have collapsed under the weight of their own impulses. His power was built on self-governance, not conquest. Now look at the rulers who fell. Nero, driven by vanity. Commodus, blinded by pleasure. Countless generals, nobles, and kings destroyed not by external enemies, but by the appetites they mistook for strengths. Their lack of discipline made them predictable, and predictability made them easy to manipulate. This is the same trap you fall into when you allow emotion to dictate behavior, when you react impulsively, when you chase validation instead of influence. If you cannot command yourself, you cannot command anything. Think of the modern individual who sabotages their own ambitions, the worker who procrastinates despite wanting advancement, the partner who reacts emotionally and ruins the respect they crave, the student who dreams of success yet feeds habits that ensure failure. These patterns do not come from a lack of desire, they come from a lack of internal control. And without that control, power slips through your fingers no matter how fiercely you grasp for it. Discipline is not punishment, it is liberation. It frees you from the tyranny of impulse, from the sway of external pressure, from the chaos that others drown in. When you master discipline, you become untouchable, not because you are perfect, but because you cannot be easily provoked, manipulated, or redirected. People sense this. They respect it instinctively. It is the foundation of authority. Consider a simple example: the person who remains calm during conflict. Their composure disrupts the emotional rhythm of others. It forces people to negotiate on their terms. Compare this to the person who erupts instantly, who loses control, who reveals their psychological weaknesses with every outburst. Which one holds power? Which one determines the outcome? Humans surrender influence the moment they surrender discipline. This inner mastery extends beyond emotions. It governs habits, routines, and priorities. You cannot expect great outcomes while living through small habits. A strategist disciplines their time, energy, environment, and relationships with precision. They do not allow distractions to erode ambition. They do not allow comfort to dull their edge. They understand that every indulgence has a cost, and every cost affects the power they seek. And yet, discipline must be flexible. Rigidity is another form of weakness. True control lies in choosing when to bend and when to remain immovable. The disciplined person knows when to speak and when to stay silent, when to advance and when to retreat, when to indulge and when to abstain. Each choice is intentional, measured, aligned with a long-term vision. This is the difference between the ambitious and the powerful. The ambitious want everything immediately, while the powerful shape themselves patiently. But here is the darker truth: once you master discipline, you reshape how others treat you. People rely on your consistency. They trust your emotional stability. They begin to follow your lead. They avoid crossing you because they cannot predict what you will ignore and what you will address with precision. Your discipline becomes their uncertainty, and uncertainty is influence. So reflect now. What impulses rule you? What habits betray you? What emotions expose you? Until you confront these weaknesses, you remain vulnerable no matter how strategic you believe yourself to be. Power begins within, and only those who tame their inner world can shape the outer one. And now, having walked through every principle, one question remains, the one that divides the merely informed from the truly transformed. Will you use these laws to rise, or will you remain exactly who you were before hearing them? In the end, the art of control is far simpler than most imagine. You don't seize people's minds by force. You guide them with quiet pressure, subtle cues, and incentives they mistake for their own desires. True influence is invisible. The moment someone realizes you're steering them, the spell breaks. So you operate in the shadows of their assumptions, letting them believe they arrived at the decision first. Remember this: people obey what they feel they chose. They resist what they believe was imposed. Which side of that equation do you want to stand on? Ask yourself how many choices in your life were truly yours, and how many were crafted by someone who understood these rules better than you. If today's lesson unsettles you, good. It means you are finally seeing the machinery behind human behavior. Now it's your move. Tell me in the comments what insight struck you the most. Subscribe if you want more strategies that most people will never recognize until they're already caught in them. And share this video with someone who thinks they can't be influenced.